Hello and welcome to Automation Talk. Glad that you came in and joined us today. Well, as you know, you signed up for it, but today's show is going to be on our Productivity 3000, and this is sort of an update since we launched. And joining me to help put on this is Richard Palmer. He's from our business development team, and he's not new to Automation Talk. He's been in here before. Richard, I forget how long Productivity 3000 has been out for.
Welcome to Automation Talk.
Sorry about that. A little over a year. So we're just going to go through some of the updates and maybe anything that we've changed or added or.
Yeah, sure. Because we've got some really exciting stuff that we have added to the software here in the past month or so.
Okay. All right. So first off, if you're not familiar with Productivity 3000, we're just going to do sort of an overview real quick. Let me see if my keyboard is working. There we go. We'll just go over the overview, what we've got with it, and then after that, then I'm just going to sort of go through some of the key features, and Richard's actually going to show you in the software some of the key features. I might actually run around in front of the desk here and actually show some with the hardware itself. So to start off, hardware overview is what we got on the slide, and as you can see, the Productivity 3000 is a modular rack design. You can get multiple size racks like many of our other PLCs. Right now we only have one processor or CPU. Of course, I think there's always more in the lineup for any of our PLCs. 7 built-in communications ports on that particular processor. Richard, you want to talk about the communications on the processor?
Yeah, it's got built-in Ethernet. Does Modbus, industry standard, been around for a long time. And very popular communication standard with the automation industry. You've got a USB port for programming. Got a couple of serial ports, an RS-232 port and an RS-485 port. You can use those with Modbus or with ASCII to talk out to devices. Maybe you need to talk to a barcode printer or something like that. So you can connect right up to that using some of the instructions and the hardware built into the CPU.
Yeah, to date, this is one of our most powerful CPUs that has the most communications on board without having to add extra modules, where a lot of our other PLCs, if you wanted Ethernet, you had to add an Ethernet card. If you wanted Modbus or something, you had to add, or so forth. You wanted remote I/O, you had to add. Whereas this processor, you can see it on the video there, remote I/O is right off the processor. Like Richard said, you've got Modbus and so forth. You got USB. You can plug a pen drive into it and do pull data or get the program out of it.
Right, and that's one of the big selling features for this processor is the fact that there's so much built into it that makes you more productive. I mean, that's why we named it the Productivity Pro, because it does. There's so much that is there available to you, so much power as a programmer that you can take advantage of, just by using the CPU itself.
Okay, and like I said, the local remote I/O and 50 megabytes of user memory. Now, what's cool about this one is in the past, any of our other PLCs, and a lot of manufacturers this way, when you program a PLC, you put the program into the processor. When you disconnect and walk away, the program resides in the processor, but all of your notes, all of your documentation, that all stays on the computer that you use to program. Well, if that person left, got fired, deceased, lost their laptop, whatever, all that information is gone. But on the Productivity 3000, it all resides in the processor, so you can plug up and read all your notes and everything right there, right?
Right, and that's huge with our customers. I mean, customers really, really love this feature because just what you said, your hard drive dies. You're in the middle of programming, you haven't made your backup.
How many times did we hear that in tech?
Oh, all the time, man, all the time. It's amazing how many programmers die every year.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's one of the great things about it is your documentation and everything is right there in the processor, so you don't have to go hunting for it. All you got to do is walk up to it, plug in, and boom, you're right there. All your notes are there if you put them in the program like you should have in the first place. Everything's right there.
Right.
So you can take and be able to grab this and just go with it instead of having to go, at 3 a.m. in the morning, you're running around the plant trying to find the program or the laptop that's got all the program documentation on it, and some guy's taking it home or whatever. Instead of doing that, it's all right there in the processor, which is a great feature.
Yeah, I think one of the common calls we used to get in tech support also is when somebody would call in and say, Joe X programmed it, and he's no longer here, and I have the program, but I don't understand it because there's no documentation. Obviously, it's working, but if I need to make changes, it doesn't make sense to me because there's no documentation.
Absolutely, and as any programmer knows, the documentation is the heart of the program.
Right.
And if you don't, having X7 or Y23 or B:0/7 doesn't do you a whole lot of good.
You don't know
whenever you weren't the one that programmed
right.
it. So yes, this is a really big thing to have the documentation stored in the processor.
All right, on to the next slide. A little bit more on the hardware overview. Just showed some of the modules, the bases. Of course, you got AC and DC input and output modules. You've got AC and DC power supplies. The power supplies to the left of the processor. It actually just snaps on the rack. You could get multiple size racks. Hot-swappable I/O. That was another bonus side to in the development of this PLC or pack, whatever we want to call it. But when Automation Direct was looking at developing this controller, they actually said, all right, here's all the key features that we've got to have, and that was one of them, was hot-swappable I/O.
Right, because, a lot of people like being able to take and walk up to the rack, and you've got an I/O card that's went bad, and it's not a critical component, but, maybe the PLC's operating 2 or 3 different processes, and you can't take the PLC down without taking and stopping some critical process right in the middle of it.
Right.
So you'd have to schedule downtime to swap it to be able to start up another process. Well, even with the hot swap, you don't have to do that. You can walk up to the rack if you've got hot swap enabled, unscrew the terminal block off the card, take it and pull it away, unlatch the card, pull it out, put the new card in, screw the terminal block back down, and you're off and going. And
there's some really cool bits that you can go in and set for when you do hot swap.
Right. Yeah, there's bits in the program that you can go in and take the MST bits. You can take and go in and monitor those, so if a card's been removed.
Right.
If something's not quite right, so you can take and flag that in the program to skip over sections of the program or to do something alternate with the output. Maybe you do have spare cards in the system that are wired up in parallel, and you pull that card out, that you need to switch over to the other card in the program, and you can just do that automatically.
One of the last features to talk about here is the optional I/O terminal blocks, or the zip links or zip ports. I don't think I have any zip links on that one up there. I don't have any here either. But like on this particular rack, you've got a standard terminal. And this probably isn't the best one to show, but there's a standard terminal. You can see it on the slide there. When you buy an I/O module, most of the standard I/O modules are not going to come with a terminal block. So be aware that if you order one, you have to order the terminal block separately. The reason why they did that is because customers started really latching on to our ZipLink modules, and they love the ZipLink modules. So what they were doing is taking the terminal blocks that came on these and throwing them away. And it was just a cost that was being tossed out the window, and plus we want to be environmentally friendly, and we don't want to be throwing stuff in the garbage. We don't have to. So we give you that choice of, do you want a regular terminal block? Buy it. If you don't, buy the zip link and you can plug right in.
And the zip links are really handy, especially a lot of people that are taking and building machines and building control panels that are going to be taking and shipping them to someplace else to be installed.
Right.
They'll put the zip link in to use as the field termination. Instead of taking and like you would traditionally do, back several years ago, even up to just a few years ago, you'd take and wire all the stuff to the terminal block, and you bring it down to more terminal blocks, and then you'd have those for the field guys to wire into.
Right.
Well, now with zip links, you don't have to do that. You can just take and plug in the terminal block. It's pre-wired. Plug it into the zip link module. Put that on your DIN rail down there in place of all those terminal blocks, and that way you don't have a field guy touching the PLC.
Yep.
So really handy for that.
A little bit more on the hardware overview. Of course, I said there's DC inputs and outputs, AC inputs and outputs, relay outputs, and it would just put out a general. There's a handful of just general I/O as far as discrete I/O goes, and then we get into analog. You see the analog cards. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you got 8-channel thermocouples, some RTDs. You got your standard analog of 0 to 10 or plus or minus 10 or 4 to 20. And what's cool though, one of the features I always like to talk about is on the analog cards. You can see on that slide, there's actually a small LCD screen there that it'll display some info as far as like most of these up here. If they zoom in on them, you'll see they're not wired up, so it'll say like no 24 volts on it. But they're really cool cards that you can really use to your advantage.
Right. That is probably one of the most helpful things for a maintenance guy. Just to be able to walk up to the analog card, push a couple of buttons, and see what the card's actually reading on a given channel.
Yes.
He doesn't have to dig around the PLC program. He doesn't have to take and go find anything. He just walks right straight up to the card and pushes the button for the display, cycles through the display until he gets the I/O point in the display format that he wants, and he can see what's happening on that card right there without ever having to touch the PLC program.
Right. All right, move along real quick. High I/O application up to 115,000 plus. It was funny when they were actually testing out the high I/O, because a lot of times in the past, something might have a capability, but personally, I've called other manufacturers and said, hey, I had this high I/O count on my system, and then they're like, oh, we never tested that. Well, we made sure we did test it here. They had rooms and rooms full of racks with the Productivity3000 all wired up. But yeah, it's just amazing how many I/O you can get off of one of these racks, and it's really cool. And it's really simple the way that you just basically go out to a remote I/O, and you can go down with it with expansions. You can go straight off of the main processor with expansions, and you just keep growing and growing.
Yeah, it's really nice. The remote I/O is extremely simple to use. It's basically point and click, so you don't have to take and jump through a lot of programming hoops.
Yeah, it was one of my first topics when I came on board in tech support. Was I was handed remote I/O, and they said you're going to be the specialist. And yeah, you learn how to program remote I/O. Really intense, and it's some intense programming on the older stuff. On this, yeah, you plug up and it auto discovers, it sees it, and you're ready to go. There's no what slot am I in, how many I/O is in it, where do I want it to start, where do I want it to end. You don't have to do all that.
Right. Very, very, very simple.
All right. We talked about the communications intensive on the processor, but you can see there on the slide there's a lot of work went on that slide. I figure I'd just throw it in, but Richard sort of hit on all that, the communications and whatnot. Did we talk a whole lot about the, I know the last show you and I did, we did the little example of the little screen on the processor, if you could actually program. I don't think we've mentioned that today, did we? No,
we haven't. All the remote slave units that are actually remote, and the CPU itself has a LCD screen on it that you can program up to put any message on that you want. So if you've got maintenance guys that are coming around to do maintenance on your equipment, instead of them having to take and drag out the PLC program and a laptop and all that, maybe if you do your programming in a very good manner, I guess I should say, you can take and throw messages up there for them, and let them know that the sensor's bad, or that there's a gate open or something like that, and tell them where it's at, without them having to take and dig into the PLC program like you would usually have to do. So it can be a really handy tool for the maintenance folks.
It is very handy. I love the message you can put up, and Richard showed in the last talk show that we did how easy it was to program it. So if you didn't get to join us, go back and watch the recorded one. He'll walk you through step by step of going through the software, setting it up, and displaying messages to the CPU and to the slave. I know one thing that I always like, and we've used this sort of feature on some of our other PLCs, but like today when I was connecting up, I open the software up, and there might be 30 Productivity3000s out on our network. I'm like, okay, which one is it? Well, okay, I think it's this one. You can hit flash the LCD screen, and you walk over and see it's there flashing. Oh, it's the right one. I picked the right one. So,
and that's a feature on a lot of our products. Our Seymour had that first,
right?
And we found that to be extremely helpful with tech, doing tech support as well as for the customers, so because you can take and flash the screen, and you know exactly which one. There's no question about which one you're actually.
You don't accidentally shut down the wrong machine.
Absolutely. I've never done that one before.
No, me either. All right, what we're going to talk about today is the new features and updates, and the slide doesn't look very fulfilling there, but there's some new stuff, and we'll talk about it, and Richard's going to show you, look up some demos about it, which makes it look cool. But the first off is the find and replace dialog. I made sure you didn't hit too much on it last time, so fire away on what you got on it.
The find replace, it is really I think it's probably one of the best find replaces in any PLC software out there. They far exceeded my expectations whenever I first saw this.
Right.
I can't even begin to express how impressed I was with it. Because it is handy and it's useful.
Right.
We're just going to take and go and find up a little bitty tag that I have in this software here, and see where all it's used at in the program. So we go through and we pick the tag. You can type it in partially like I did here, and it'll display all the portions of the tags, or you can take and click the little down arrow and scroll through it. However you're comfortable with it. It doesn't really matter a lot. But you pick the tag, and you just say search now. It can't get much simpler than that. And then over here on the right in the search results, in this big white box over here, you will see what all the search results actually are. And it shows you every single place in the program that this is used at. There's no taking and not seeing where it's used at. If you take a look down here towards the bottom, you see it's used in a data logger. You see that it's used in a data view. You'll see that it's used in zone stop control task. You'll see it's used twice in the latter's PEGM task. All those places are right there in the software in places that you've used this. So if you want to go to one of these, all you do is double click on it, and I'll have to move the window out of the way here real quick, just a second. And you'll see down here at the bottom highlighted, down here where my cursor is, that it's found that flag discharge jam low tag that I went searching for. If I want to go find it in the data view, I double click, it pops up my data view and highlights the line in the data view where I'm looking for it at.
That's too cool.
Yeah, it's really, really nifty. So, you could take and jump to places in your program really quick if you know what the tag is that you've used.
Right.
In the software. If you want to take and replace it, you make you a new tag. We'll just call it flag new tag, if I could spell. Put the G in there, all right? I'm going to say replace selected. Okay, again, it prompts me to take and make the tag because I haven't actually made this tag yet. So we can tell it and set all those different things up in the tag database that we want. We say OK, and now whenever we go searching for the old tag, you can see that it's no longer actually used. We go take in and search for the new tag, and there it is, right there.
Now, one of the features I think you were showing the other day is that you can, instead of replacing everything, you can replace some of.
Yeah. So let's say we only want to replace this in zone stop control. So you can see I've unchecked timers PEGM, and we're just going to replace new tag in the zone stop control with another tag. And we'll change it. We're just going to change it back to what it was just for grins and giggles.
Sounds
because
good.
We can. And we say replace selected, and there it is. So now if we go searching for flag new tag, we'll see it's only in timers PEGM. And we go search for the discharge jam low, and we should see that it's used in the zone stop control.
And that's too cool because, like in DirectSoft, when you replace something, you search, you replace, and it replaces everything. There's no selecting which ones you do and don't want to replace.
You can select which rungs you want to replace between,
right?
But it's not as selective as this is,
right? Because
this one, if I only wanted to replace it in this rung 20.2, I could uncheck everything but rung 20.2, and it's just going to change it in that one spot,
right?
Whereas with DirectSoft, there really isn't any way to do that. You have to replace a section of rungs. So yes, it's very, very, very handy. And like I said, to me, this is one of the coolest features that has been added to the software, and it's also one of the most useful in the way that they've implemented it.
Okay. Let's talk about the next item on the slide is the Ethernet communications improvements. You give a little bit. My vocabulary on this one isn't too well.
Okay. Well, a lot of the improvements are, we've made some reliability improvements. Obviously, that's something that's a continual thing with us. We're always improving the reliability of stuff. So as customers report stuff, obviously we fix it. Because we like hearing from the customers, the good with the bad.
Right.
And when customers tell us that something isn't working right, we go out and we do our best to make it work right.
Well, from what one of the product engineers was telling me is that the Ethernet's always worked well with it, but
absolutely.
if you had a network that was sort of iffy, of course you'd have some errors. So they actually improved it where if you had a network that wasn't real stable, it will still work with it.
Right, and it actually can improve the stability of the network as far as what's related to the Productivity 3000 goes. You know, your other devices may still suffer, but the Productivity 3000 is a little bit more robust now with that.
Right.
Another new feature that we've got is internet connectivity now. A lot of people like being able to connect to the pack through the internet to be able to program it, change things, help customers out, troubleshoot, that type of thing. So now whenever you take and go to choose your pack and go to your connections, whenever you say add connection to it, in addition to the IP address, there's now a port number.
Mm-hmm.
And port numbers are the way that you talk to devices through routers.
Right.
And so now you can actually select a port number to talk to the pack on the other side. Your router would be configured for port forwarding.
Mm-hmm.
And you would forward this port number that you're using here to the port 999 on the pack IP that's inside the network that you're trying to get to. So that's one of the features that's been added, as well as making the internet connectivity a lot more stable, a lot more robust, and able to be able to withstand a lot more of the nastiness that goes on in the internet. So
bad practices on networks.
Yes, bad networking practices over the internet. So that is one of the nice things that they've added in there. So if you need to connect to a pack over the internet, you can do so now.
Okay. All right. The next topic we've got is new KEP Direct software that just launched like a month ago, I think it was.
Right. Yeah.
For Productivity 3000, we've had KEP Direct for a while, or we've offered KEP Direct for a while, but for the Productivity 3000, they updated all of that. You want to tell a little bit about what KEP Direct is, or what it would be used for, in case somebody's like, I have no clue.
Well, KEP Direct's an OPC server.
Mm-hmm.
OPC has been around for a long time. There's actually a governing body for OPC,
yes,
just like there is for Modbus. Modbus.org is the governing body, sanctioning body for Modbus.
Right.
OPC.org is the sanctioning body for OPC servers. OPC servers allow you to take and through a generic style interface connect between, say, a PLC and some piece of software that's running on your PC.
Right.
So, if you want to take and connect a PC to a SCADA package, for example, you can use an OPC server as the communications wedge, as it were, to be able to provide the connectivity between the SCADA software that may or may not have any actual hardware drivers in it for PLCs,
right,
to the actual PLC itself. So it's basically just a wedge that sets in there, handles the communication traffic to and from the PLC, and then passes that information along to a PC software package.
Okay. We'll show you something, and I'm going to get Richard to show you something in just a second on the internet. We'll talk about the last thing, but of course we have new modules coming soon. I'm not going to let out what exactly it is, but we do have some that'll probably be towards the end of the year. There's some higher end modules that, of course, we would have loved to have come out when the product came out, but we're trying to add some more features to everything, and so some of them got delayed. But yeah, keep your eyes open. We're going to have new hardware come out, and in the months ahead. Richard, if you don't mind, can you go to our website and maybe show the customers, firmware and software on the Productivity 3000? If they want to get the software for free, you can go to our website at AutomationDirect.com, and you can download it. And I'll let Richard, they're over on the software side there.
Yeah, if you need to download the software, up here at the top of the page, there's a little bar that runs across here, right underneath the black bar, that says Home, Tech Support, Downloads, Product Info, Manuals, Docs, About Us, and My Account. If you click on the Technical Support link there, it will take and open up the Technical Support site.
Mm-hmm.
Once you get there, you can go to Free Software Upgrades and Tools, scroll down to the Productivity 3000. It's the third thing on the list.
Mm-hmm.
Click on that, and then there's a link here that says Download File. Once you click on the link, you'll be downloading the Productivity software. It is free.
Probably not forever, though.
Maybe not forever, but for the moment it is free, so take advantage of it while you can.
This is probably at least a $500 software package. I mean, if you had to compare it with some of the other software packages that we've sold for $500, I'd say this is a $3,000 software package.
Oh, yeah.
But when we start selling it, they were looking at about like the $500 range, so grab it while you can.
Yep.
Because it's not going to be free forever.
Yeah.
So what about firmware? If somebody already has a Productivity 3000 and we've had some updates or some releases, show them where they can find the.
Yeah, if you need to find our firmware, you can take and find it off the same link right at the top of the page before you click to Productivity 3000. It says firmware right here at the top. Click on that. Then you would click on the firmware binaries, scroll down and pick the processor that you're using, and then go from there. Here's the productivity firmware right there.
And if you click on that, it'll tell you what improvements or updates have been made, if there's any changes or any bugs have been fixed. If you go to that firmware download and open it up, it'll tell you everything right there.
But we actually keep the history on the site as well. Right underneath the binary link, there's a history link. So you can go there and click and find out the history of firmware for any device on our site. While we're on this subject, right below that, very important link, something we added a few years ago, and we've had great success with it, the firmware update notification service. If you haven't signed up for that, go click on this link, and it will let you know every time we update firmware. We also have one for the software as well. So click on this, pick up what products that you're interested in receiving the notifications for, put in your email address up here at the top. We keep this list totally private. This list is not used for anything other than notifying you for firmware. So don't worry about getting any spam emails from anything. Don't worry about getting advertising.
You're not going to hand it off to our ad department?
No, unfortunately, no. This is a totally private email right here. We keep it separate from everything else.
Right.
So if you take and sign up here, you'll get just the firmware notification, so you'll know the instant we take and upload new firmware for it. And like I said, we also have one for the software as well. You can get to it off of the software page.
Yeah, it's a very, very useful tool. All right, I'm going to say we're going to go ahead and move forward. Where we're at now is our question and answer session. So I'm going to let everybody go ahead and chime in. If you have any questions for us, just select on the little Ask a Question button, as you can see on the slide there, and it's right below your video. And ask us any questions you've got about the Productivity 3000, anything in the software, future, anything. And meanwhile, there was a few questions that when people signed up, they asked a few of them. Richard, one of them was a FIFO instruction.
Okay.
FIFO stands for first in, first out.
First in, first out.
What is an example of where FIFO would be used at, or what would it be used for, if you have any type of examples?
FIFO, well, a great example is for like a conveyor.
Okay.
Yeah, you put a box on the conveyor. You put the first box on the conveyor, it starts moving down the conveyor, and when it gets to the end, it's going to be taken off the conveyor.
Right.
Presumably, at least. We're going to assume that it is here. So, you're putting multiple boxes on, you need to keep track of them.
Right.
So you would be stuffing, let's say, box numbers into the FIFO. So as you put the boxes on the conveyor, you're putting box numbers in there, maybe with a scan gun, scanning the USB code or something like that.
Right.
And then once you take them off the conveyor, at the end, you would be taking and emptying the FIFO out. So the first one that went on the conveyor is the first one that comes off the conveyor.
Okay.
So that's a example of what a FIFO is.
Okay. As far as instructions, is there a FIFO instruction here, or is this something that similar to it?
Yeah, we actually do have a FIFO instruction here. Give me a second here. I'll replace that instruction. So yeah, this makes it pretty easy. You'd set up an array to put the data to, possibly, and then you'd set up the where the data comes from here in the data from field, obviously. And then every time the input line triggers, it's going to take and push data from this input register into the array and push all the elements down in the array. So if you have any questions about it, the best thing to do, click the help button.
The help file in here is awesome.
The help file is absolutely fantastic. So if you've got questions on it, you can take and click on the help file. As you can see, it takes and leads you right through it, gives you an application example, and what the rung actually looks like. So
cool.
That'll help you out a lot.
Okay. All right. There's a question here. You're probably, I don't know, I'm probably not going to like the answer, but I'm going to ask a question anyway. If I've got a Productivity 3000 and I have a fault history, is there any way to display that fault history on, say, HMI panel?
Not at the moment, but it's a really good suggestion, and we'll certainly pass it along to both the Seymour folks and the productivity folks to take a look at and see if it's something we might possibly be able to do in a future release of software.
All right, that's what I thought. What, just out of curiosity, I don't know, I'm not familiar with, what would I use a fault history for? I mean,
well, the fault history, you know, it tells what all faults have happened in the PLC. So, you know, a lot of times that's really handy for the maintenance guys, because they can look up and see, okay, the PLC's power cycled. Okay, so you know they know power cycle.
Right.
Okay, you know the one of the cards went missing for a few moments for whatever reason. You know the operator.
Bubba was pulling cards out again.
Exactly. Not that I've ever had that happen at any place I've ever worked, but yeah, something like that. I mean, you know, because that sort of stuff does happen. You know, I know a lot of operators that would walk up and flip the switch from run to stop so they could take a 5-minute smoke break.
Nice.
And then call maintenance.
Nice.
You know, so that sort of stuff happens, unfortunately, and you know, being able to access fault history and those types of diagnostic tools lets you know right away,
right,
if somebody's messing with you or if something's actually happening.
Okay.
So.
All right. Good question then. All right. Don't have any other questions come in, but if you do have any, please go ahead and ask them, and we can still answer them even after the show. I'll try to log them. That's pretty much it for the Q&A. The last slide here is basically just, don't forget, you know, we've got our AutomationTalk website. You signed up for it, but you can go back and watch any of our previous shows, sign up for any of the new shows. We've always got 4 of them. I think we're all up to June now on our shows. Our Learn at AutomationDirect.com website has a lot of tutorials. And I need to put a link in here for our YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel is skyrocketing. So take a look at YouTube, and you can, I believe it's /AutomationDirect.com on the YouTube. I forget, but you can look up Automation Direct and find our actual channel. But we were going through some of the stats yesterday, and we love more of our customers to go out and watch the YouTube videos, and we're throwing some new ones out every week. I'm doing some real short ones on any new products that we're coming out with. I throw those up 2 minutes or less, just going over what the products are. So please take a look at that. Last link on there is our interconnecting automation. That's for online training and also in-person training. Doug Bell does all that kind of training for us. So.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I think he'll be here next month.
Cool. All right. Well, we're at the end of the show. I want to thank Richard for coming in here and giving a little demo and explaining some stuff that I was not familiar with. But thanks, Richard. Try to grab him and bring him in here some more.